So the finale of Wandavision has finally come, and with all 9 episodes now being released on Disney Plus, it's time to talk about them. I'm going to do what I did very similar to Mandalorian. I'm going to talk about everything as a whole at first, and then go through each episode individually. So starting off, the series as a whole, really great show. Holy crap, this is probably one of the best things the MCU has made, and that's a really high bar to clear. I mean, yeah, not everything the MCU makes is perfect. I will admit that. I'm a huge MCU fan, but they've had some duds. Incredible Hulk, Thor the Dark World, Captain Marvel, Spider-Man Far From Home. Those movies range from mediocre, to crap. So, yeah, not everything they make is going to be pure gold. And even some of the films I will acknowledge aren't top tier movies. Like the first Thor, the second Iron Man, even the first Captain America, which I really like actually. Not top tier. It's not top tier film. But the MCU has made some of the most influential, innovative, and best films in cinema history with their Avengers movies, Thor Ragnarok, Winter Soldier, Civil War, the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, the first Iron Man. I would even argue the third Iron Man, too. So this is a really high bar to clear. So this is their first attempt for a Disney Plus miniseries as part of the MCU, and they knocked it out of the park right off the bat. This shows that and to all the DC fanboy idiots who were saying that Marvel is dead after MCU didn't release anything last year, after a year-long hiatus, this was like a perfect return for them. And especially since those idiots who were saying that forget that DC released 2 shitty movies last year. They might have released more films when the MCU didn't, but they didn't release any good ones. So, the MCU took a year-long hiatus, and finally we get WandaVision, and it's really good. It is legitimately really good. So everybody knows, all the basics have been covered by everything else in the MCU, like the acting, the visuals, the music, all of that is always going to be good with the MCU. Well, almost. There's one exception, and that's Kat Dennings. I hate Kat Dennings so damn much. I do not understand why they brought her back for this. I hate her character. I hate the actress. She's annoying as fuck, and her acting has not improved since Thor. It really has not. So that is my biggest problem, so I'm going to get that off right off the bat. Fucking hate Darcy, and I hate Kat Dennings so much. If you like Darcy, I will never understand why. She's annoying. And I wanted to shoot her every single time she showed up on screen. So, it's almost kind of pointless to talk about the basics of this, so let's just jump right into the episodes like I did with the Mandalorian review. The first episode, filmed before a live studio audience. This one was an interesting intro. I'm gonna combine the first. The first one's filmed before a live studio audience, and second one is Don't Touch That Dial. The episodes were put on Disney Plus at the exact same time, which was interesting. I assumed they would go just a week at a time. But then they dropped the first 2 at the same time, and I thought that was interesting at first. But after watching them, I understand why. First off, these are the only 2 that are in black and white. Second, they're the only 2 that really feel similar, because they're the only ones that don't have, any huge story relevance quite yet, other than the radio, the radio, and the one beekeeper-looking guy with the sword logo on his back. Those are the only 2 things that really play into the larger MCU. They're the introduction to this show, and they're also a few of the shorts. Like the first episode is 29 minutes, and it's the short. That's probably another reason why they posted the second one, because they're like, this is 29 minutes. We might want to just throw the other one on there just to give people a little bit more. So, yeah, these first 2 episodes are really good. I like the first one where they're having to conceal their powers and Vision's real form during the dinner and while he's at his job. This is actually a very funny episode. I was surprised at actually how funny this was. I thought it was going to be a lot of really bad 50s comedy, because I've heard, like, radio shows, and I've seen, like, sitcoms from the 50s, and I generally don't laugh at all. But here, I was surprised at how funny it was, and the second episode's very similar. And I really like that these first two episodes don't try to shove too much MCU into your face. Like I said, I love the MCU, but I appreciate how these were able to stand on their own on their episodes. Like, they were just they're kind of in their own world the way Wanda wants. So, and that's kind of the point. So I like how they did what they did with these first two episodes. Third episode, Now in Color, where Wanda becomes pregnant and gives birth to twins. And this is not all these episodes I like, so I'm just gonna get that off right off the bat. The best thing about this episode is the simple fact that her pregnancy, which genuinely lasts around 9 months, maybe longer, maybe shorter, depending, but generally it's around 9 months. And it happens in the span of about 4 hours. So, I thought that was really funny. And she, of course, gives birth to twins, Billy and Tommy, who, in the comics and in the show, I guess, become Wiccan and Speed. As later on they show they get powers, but I'll get to that in a bit. There's not much to say on this episode, because it's also one of the shortest. But this does show what's happening on the outside. It sets up what's going on outside. And show that not everybody in this little show that Wanda made, is exactly what she made. Like, there are people from the outside trying to get in. And first I didn't know where they were going with this, but episode 4, We Interrupt This Program, tells us all we need to know. For better and for worse. So, this episode it's where Monica and James Woo and Thomas Hayward, and Darcy are trying to figure out what's going on inside the Hex and a way to get in, or potentially a way to get Wanda out. And at first, I was really liking this episode at first. I really was. And James Woo was one of my favorite parts of Ant-Man and the Wasp. And I love that he's still doing the close-up magic thing where he does the little magic thing where the card like comes out of his sleeve like that. And later on where he undoes the handcuffs with the pin in the finale. That was freaking awesome. I didn't expect him to do that, because I knew he was in the show. But when he just did that with the card, I immediately... I laughed my ass off when I saw that, because that was hilarious. But the main problem with this episode starts to come up later, and the majority of it, for one, Darcy. I hate they brought her into this. And my main problem is with Monica Rambeau, but I'll get more into that later. So this episode, I like how they explain everything. They don't try to bullshit their way around any of this. Everything they say makes at least MCU sense. Because a lot of this stuff has no basis in reality, because we're dealing with magic and superpowers and infinity stones and stuff that doesn't exist in our reality. At least not that we know of. So it at least makes sense within the context of the MCU. And I like they're trying to set up Hayward as the villain. He doesn't really do much, but they set up this antagonist, and while he's not that intimidating, he's kind of an idiot too. But I think that's kind of the point. And I forgot where I was going with this. And I like in this episode how they show how the blip, which is still a stupid name, how the blip actually affected reality. Spider-Man Far From Home, which as you know is the only MCU film I despise, showed a comedic side to this horrifying event where a bunch of people all of a sudden appear back in reality, freaking people out, having no idea where they are or what's going on, and realizing that it's been 5 years since they disappeared, and everything's just chaos. It shows that in this episode, inside this little hospital. Spider-Man Far From Home played this for some cheap laughs, and I hated it. I hated it so much. This one, this is how it should have been done. It should have been taken seriously. Hurting my neck from yelling. in episode 5 on a very special episode where Wanda addresses Vision's worries that when he kind of grows suspicious of the neighbors having kind of like strange behavior, strange reactions to what's going on, he's starting to notice something's off. And that comes into play later, more in the next episode. And the main takeaway everybody has from this episode is the appearance of Evan Peters as Pietro Maximoff. Well, Pietro. And I thought this was really cool. And I like how the shot from the back, the way he has his hair, it looks exactly like Aaron Taylor Johnson's did in Age of Ultron. One thing I will say, though, I really miss Aaron Taylor Johnson as Quicksilver. I want them to bring him back. This is the first time he's gotten a mention in the show, is episode 3, where he first got a mention. They finally addressed Pietro again, because they have not talked about him in 6 years, and I'm so glad they finally got back around to it. Because in the original draft of Endgame, or one of the original drafts of Endgame, when Hawkeye travels back in time, he doesn't pick up a baseball glove. He brings back Pietro, and I think that would have been awesome. But no, we have to wait till this, and we don't even get the real Pietro. I like Evan Peters, and I like him as Peter Maximoff in the X-Men film. But I really want to see Aaron Taylor Johnson come back. There's not much else to say on this episode. It's kind of this episode's kind of par for the course, except for the ending. But the ending's really what this episode is all building towards. Well, yeah, kind of. It's kind of, this is more of a bridge episode, where it's just trying to get from one episode to the next, but it's still done very well. In episode 6, all new Halloween Spooktacular. And this is where the shit really starts to hit the fan for Wanda. Not for the audience, because this episode's awesome, but for Wanda. The first thing I will say, I love the comic accurate costumes here. I like the Scarlet Witch suit. I like the ridiculous looking Vision. I love Evan Peters' Pietro dressing up like the Pietro from the comics, where he's got the hair up like this. He's got the lightning bolt all the way down his suit, and he's got the bright blue, and it's freaking hilarious. And I like how the kids are kind of dressed up like Wiccan and Speed as well from the comics. I think that was really cool. And this is where the kids first get their powers. And basically they have the powers of Wanda and Pietro. Wiccan has Wanda's powers, and Speed has Pietro's powers. So I like Evan Peters in this, and I really like how they give subtle hints that something's off with him. The first thing you see is when, which one? I can't remember which twin is which. I can't remember which one's Billy and which one's Tommy. I keep forgetting, but that's why I just call him Wiccan and Speed. That's the only way I can tell them apart. But Wiccan is like doing the fourth wall thing, where he's just like talking to the camera for the beginning of the episode, and when he's playing video games with Speed and Pietro, you see Pietro, Speed doesn't pay him any attention like most shows wouldn't, but you see Pietro, he's like looking over at him like he's crazy. He's like, what the hell is this kid doing? So that gives a very subtle hint that he's not what they're saying he is. And later on, I like that Wanda's, she suddenly sees, the dead versions of her husband and her brother, Vision. You see him all, gray, and you see the Mind Stone, pulled out. I think that was in episode 4, wasn't it? Or was it 3? I think it was 4. And then this one, you see, he's got, a zombie face, and and his chest is, riddled with bullet holes and blood. And it's actually really it's actually kind of scary, too, but I thought it was really cool. And, of course, at the end, it's not like your dead husband can die twice. And that's where you realize she didn't do that. Something else is going on here. And this is where she's able to extend the hex to where she's able to save Vision. This is where Vision officially figures out what's going on, because Agatha tells him basically what's going on. And she ends up nabbing a bunch of the sword trucks and jeeps and people and turning it into a circus, which is actually kind of funny, and including Darcy. And that comes from play in the next episode, breaking the fourth wall. And as Monica and James, Wu, and Darcy were trying to find a way to get back into the Hex, and Wanda's just trying to navigate all these complications that are happening, starting with Vision figuring everything out, and the residents starting to figure stuff out, and Sword being onto her, and just everything hitting the fan. And then this episode you have Vision in a clown car or clown thing. It's like a circus van with Darcy, and Vision's lines are funny. Darcy's aren't. Like, I also like Vision does the office thing where he looks directly at the cameras like this. I also like when they're like talking to the camera, like they're doing the interview thing. That's actually really funny. I like the lines they have in this. This is also one of the shortest episodes, but this is another bridge episode. And like I said, the bridge episodes are doing really well, and I like how they kind of spaced them out. Have y'all ever seen the show Steven Universe? It's a terrible show, and one of the main problems is that it'll have a really, like, a big story scene that something that has a lot of relevance, and then it'll have, 5 episodes of crappy filler before coming back to it. Like, it doesn't space anything out. It's too spaced out. The pacing of that show is a complete nightmare, and that show's atrocious to begin with, but that's not the point. This one spaces the filler episodes out right. It has episodes 3 and 7 are the bridge episodes, and that seems like the perfect places to put them. So there's not too much filler, but there's also not just story with no time to breathe. As in, we don't want to Rise of Skywalker this shit where we're getting story. We're getting story, a little bit of filler to everything to catch their breath, and then they get back into the story for a few episodes, then they catch their breath, then they get back into the story. I like the pacing of this show. And the reveal of this episode is that Agnes is Agatha Harkness, which was one of the most popular fan theories, and even I knew this was probably coming, but I like how they did it. And of course the song is actually trending quite a bit on Spotify and iTunes and all that other shit. And it's even on, the little Spotify playlist Disney Hits. Agatha All Along is actually on there. And that's fucking hilarious. That's hilarious. And this is the first time they name drop... No, wait, that's the next episode. Forget what I was about to say. Then the next episode, episode 8, Previously On, where this is the origin episode where it shows what caused Wanda to do this and how she's doing it. And it starts all the way back from her childhood with the real young Wanda and Pietro, as their home is, of course, destroyed by Stark Industries tech, and that's exactly what they say it is in Age of Ultron. That it was Stark Industries tech that destroyed their home and killed their parents. And it shows them... Well, it doesn't show any... This is the episode I wanted Pietro to appear in. Because this would have made the most sense to have her see Pietro, especially when they when they first get their powers, it would have been nice to see her because when he's first using his super speed, you see him in that little cage, it looks like he's being a lot more tortured than shit. He's, constantly, cringing like this, he's always like this, it looks like he's in serious pain, so it would have been nice to see Wanda actually see that. But they show her get her powers from the Mind Stone, and it shows a little vision of the Scarlet Witch costume, which shows up multiple times in the show, and we'll come back to that in the next episode. And it shows her get her powers from Hydra. And then it shows her after the events of Endgame, where she goes to see the body of Vision, where we find out Hayward lied, and she did not take the body of Vision. She created a new one out of her powers, and created this entire fantasy world almost by accident, but not entirely, which I think is kind of interesting that she didn't purposely do all of this 100% intentionally, but this wasn't a freak accident that she just kind of went with. I like how they found a good balance here, and this shows why this has one of the best relationships in the MCU and pretty much in superhero movies in general, because that was one of the things that people complained about in Civil War and Infinity War, and even something I noticed, is that the relationship between them, while it was still good, was kind of underdeveloped. But this this develops it to the max. This is really well done. And the end of the episode, the very last line, in fact, they finally name drop Scarlet Witch. Oh, I also forgot to mention for the people who say that Marvel's just for kids, the opening scene of this episode, show this to your kids. How quickly are they going to be scarred for life? I'm not kidding. I'm 18, and that opening scene was horrifying. I saw them, like, become zombies and stuff laying there. I'm like, holy shit. And I've seen all 3 Blade movies, and those have more brutal kills than this, but holy shit. And now the final episode, appropriately titled the series finale. This episode's sad. This is like one big battle for the first 20 minutes. This episode's 49 minutes, and the first 20 of this is a big battle in the city. And I like how they appropriately match up all these characters. Wanda fights Agatha, Vision fights White Vision, and the one thing I like about the Vision v Vision fight is that it starts off as a fight, but then it's resolved through logic and reasoning, which is what Vision seems to be what Vision is about. Because he's not entirely human, but he's not entirely AI either. So he has human emotion, but he has the logical reasonings of artificial intelligence, which so it seems like that'd be the perfect way to do this. And of course, Speed and Wiccan fight the military, and it's pretty funny. I like it, it's fun. And we find that this is not an alternate universe Pietro. His name is Ralph Boner. And of course he makes a boner joke about that. I was even thinking it. I'm like, he's gonna make the joke. He's gonna make the joke. There it is. So yeah, and this is where I'm gonna bring up my problem with Monica Rambeau. She gets her powers by forcing her way back into the Hex. I don't give a shit. They're acting like she's such an important character, yet it's a character I don't give a shit about. She doesn't seem to have any defining character traits to her. She's a boring-ass character, and she's a little side character who's an annoying kid who's on screen for 10 minutes in a bland-ass movie no one cared about. The second worst Marvel movie, and she was just that annoying kid that no one gave a shit about. Why should I care here that she suddenly gained superpowers for no goddamn reason? She didn't earn these superpowers, they just gave her superpowers because Disney needs another black female superhero, I guess. And I don't care. I don't need your social justice bullshit crammed into the MCU. But thankfully, she does very little here. And I do appreciate that Darcy does jack shit in this. I mean, she rams her truck into Hayward's Jeep and basically stops him there, and I hate that they gave Darcy relevance. I really wish they just omitted her from this episode entirely. Instead, she only had one line, wasn't funny, and I literally did this at her because I hate her so much. I did this, but the same, even if you don't like the fight, the one thing it does do, and it's a nice callback to Doctor Strange, where she doesn't beat Agatha by using brute force. She uses it using her wits and outsmarting the villain instead of beating them in submission like most Marvel movies or most action movies, really. And I like the way she officially takes Agatha down. And then the last 20 minutes of this is really heartbreaking to watch. I know a lot of people will say, like, the most heartbreaking moment of this was when she was saying goodbye to Vision. Saddest part for me was watching that Hex, like, close in while the camera's still pointed to the two kids. I'm like, oh my god, these poor kids. Normally I can't stand kid characters in movies like this, or in shows like this, but I actually really like Tommy and Billy. So it was really sad seeing that Hex come down and just knowing they're just gonna disappear. That was really sad. Yeah, thanks for squealing your tires while I'm trying to do a review, jackass. But this is on par with the Avengers Endgame ending as far as emotion goes. And I like she gets the suit, and I figured it'd be some kind of armor to it. It usually is, so it's kind of armored, but it looks badass too, so I'm not going to complain. And so, yeah, so the goodbyes are done very well. I like how everything wraps up. And then there are two end credit scenes to this. The first one is a Skrull talking to Monica and telling her that basically Captain Marvel is summoning her, setting up Captain Marvel 2. I still don't care. I'm glad this wasn't the only end credit scene. This would have been a really lame way to end this show. But the second end credit scene, holy shit! Damn, it's windy. She's using her astral projection form to read the witch book, which is another nice callback to Doctor Strange. And also, you hear her kids calling out to her. And that adds an interesting mystery to this. Are her kids still alive? Did they not disappear when the Hex did? Are they stuck somewhere? And his vision stuck with them? And I hope we get these answers in Doctor Strange 2. I cannot freaking wait for that to come out. So yeah, overall, this show was awesome. I cannot wait for Falcon and Winter Soldier coming in 2 weeks. If you had to ask me what was my favorite episode, probably either episode 6 or episode 9 would probably be my two favorites. If I had to pick the weakest episode, weakest episode would probably be episode 4, because that just seems to be by-the-book Marvel stuff, even though it explains everything good, but it introduces a lot of characters I don't care about or are really boring, except for James Woo, who they've been talking about maybe an X-Files type storyline in the Marvel Universe starring him. I'd be totally down for that, as long as they don't put Darcy in it. Just James Woo. Randall Park can lead that on his own. He doesn't need the annoying presence of Kat Dennings. So, yeah, this show's great. I don't think I'm gonna score this one. I'm not gonna score this one. The TV shows are too hard to score. You know what? I'll give it a shot. Considering this isn't, like, not every single thing was done perfectly, I'm still giving it a very high score. If you love the MCU, you will love this, and if you like the MCU, you've probably seen this all already. So yeah, I'm going to give WandaVision a 4.8 out of 5. This was awesome. I can't wait for Falcon and Winter Soldier. I can't wait for Black Widow. I can't wait for all these other Marvel projects coming up. Oh, and yeah, that wraps up for WandaVision. Man, that's sad. I really like this show. I'm glad they got more shows coming. So yeah, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.